beauties. I trust you are amazing tonight. Holy heavens, I was completely unprepared. Everything shut down at the very last minute, and I still don't have half the stuff working, but that's okay. We're here, we're doing it, and it's live, so here we go. I wanted to thank Spirituality Gone Wild tonight. We are here from Silver Birch Studios. My platform is called Lighthouse Effects. And this week, I'm just going to talk about the mess for a bit. So I have a few items I'm going to put in here because every week I love putting together set lists for people and musical ideas. So this is the first one. It was from quite a few years ago when Chris Cornell was still alive, featured on Saturday Night Live. He was playing with the Zac Brown Band. So I really dig that tune. Please check it out in case you haven't already. And then the next one that I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in today, as always, is the needs list, because I want to practice it more. This week was messy. So way to celebrate the mess. I'm really grateful that I grew up with Sesame Street and the electric company, because like a part of Sesame Street was always this idea that messiness was fun, right? Like Cookie Monster would just shove all the cookies in his mouth and blah, and like all of it would go spilling off to the side. And it was this idea of that there was joyful, that the spirit was in there. Like you didn't have to have it all figured out on Sesame Street. I mean, my hair is bothering me. Okay, hopefully that stuck to the side of my face a bit more. Okay, anyway. So when I'm thinking about like the messiness of structure, I really get into this place of okay, first of all, hi everybody. Second, have you ever been, and when was the last time that you were in some type of negotiations that you were recognizing in the middle of it that things weren't going well? How far along down that rabbit hole did you go when you realized that things weren't going well? This weekend, like a couple days ago, we're starting all these contract negotiations for the center here and for the recording studio. And as all of this information was coming in, what I was recognizing was, you know, when you think you're on the same page with somebody and then you realize halfway through that you're not on the same page at all? Yeah, that. And then what are skill sets you have evolved within yourself in order to slow down and start to reverse a storyline? So with that, I started on this idea. I was out meditating and praying as I was doing my walking, and the vision came to me, or the idea came to me of, this is what I see emotionally with humanity. What if each of us were babies and we stopped learning how to crawl? Like skip the whole crawling, couldn't even get to walking stage. That is where I sense a lot of humanity is emotionally. Haven't just barely gotten to that crawling stage. Like mental health was one thing for an extensive period of time, right? There's like the whole mental health thing. But then people were like, wow, the only thing that mental health really brought me was to the pharmaceutical industry. So way to go, pharmaceutical industry. But it doesn't mean that we were able to move beyond that, right? All of those years of sitting in the chairs and wondering what the heck was going on, and like trying to piece together all these, like, I don't know, my great uncle was doing this, and then my grandfather did this. So we were able to learn some about our lineage, but we never really got to this place of wholehearted emotional health until like the 1990s, the 2000s. And that's really Western culture, right? So then it was starting to merge the things like breath work, the things like body work, the all of the spiritual and the religious and the scientific and kind of merging all of those together, and then started to understand what was going on chemically within the brain and how that begins to project onto what we're seeing in front of us. So in this space over this past week, I was able to recognize within myself how many stories I can create about people and about scenarios that may or may not be true. But this time I was able to say to myself, that may or may not be true. So people are taking in this information, right? Whatever these experiences are. And then, or they're taking it in from back here, right? And then they're like, oh, and they're creating these great big stories out of them, which may or may not be true. And the beautiful thing about our system, our internal system, like our 4-year-old, our 7-year-old, I was just talking about this on another friend of mine on her show. The beautiful thing about this internal system is that it's set up to protect us at all costs. It's to make everybody else the enemy. Everybody. And if it's a really, really high functioning system, then it even makes us the enemy. Like all of the self-doubt, the projections, the self-ridicule, all of that. If we have a really high level system of protection, it even starts to take us apart. It's like a big gaseous star that implodes or emanates. So I started watching as I was going into this shutdown mode over these contract negotiations. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to fill in the blanks for information that I don't actually have. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to put a whole bunch of guesswork together and a whole bunch of framework together on things that I may or may not have all of the information for. But luckily, I have taken so many courses in emotional behavior and in emotional health and studied so much around brain chemicals that I was able to recognize the shutdown process. How many of you have been there? You're in the midst of like a, oh my gosh, what's going on? And that you're able to observe it for one moment. So as I was going through this powerful recognition, I sat for a few minutes and I started to think about, what are the stories that I'm telling myself? Have I actually checked in to see if any of these things are accurate? And even if they are accurate, how do I come to the table with whole health? And maybe it's not even whole health. Maybe it's just like a little bit more health. And maybe in 20 years from now, it won't even be considered healthy. It'll be like, wow, you were at that level of dysfunction? Because I'm thinking about like all the times that people like, I went and got counseling, and you're like, really? That's really remarkable, because it doesn't sound like anything is any better. And in these spaces, I was able to stop and go into this place of prayer and take a lot more walks and stop engaging when I don't have the answers, or when my only answers are toxicity. I think we've given a very wide berth for an extensive period of time about people being allowed and feeling like it's okay to just do anything, say anything, like you can be anything you want to be. And where did that lead us? I think about this with mathematics, right? It's the lowest common denominator. Now, I agree that it had to happen. You have to level out society, and you have to get rid of the false pretenses, and you have to like kind of, as you're turning down that ego, you have to really rejuvenate and restore the spirit with words and with wisdom and with kindness. So as that ego is being turned down, the whole society like yeah, just kind of showing up, and it's like, I'm gonna wear my underwear into the local supermarket. What are you gonna say about it? Right? And it's this last ditch effort in order to, it's the playground. It's the, you didn't do that. And how quickly that all disintegrates. So it's no wonder that we're here, right? But as we're here, what are we doing with this information? Are we actually addressing our needs as a nation and as the globe? Not you did me wrong, not that. Not, oh my gosh, you're so screwed up. Not that one either. So I think about like the 4-year-old inside of me. It's like, I got a long list of why that person is a terrible person and you should not be around them anymore. And my 7-year-old agrees, and my 14-year-old agrees, the internal pieces of myself. All those pieces are like, damn right. That's absolutely the case. And being able to like sit with that 4-year-old and that 7-year-old and that 14-year-old for, or even just to recognize that they are running the show. And then taking this breath and being like, oh man, yeah, let's find another way. I get it. I get that there can be a gentleness here, and that the boundaries that we're actually asking for and the value, the core human value, that is what we're processing and filtering. People being seen, people being heard, people being nourished, right? The coming together of that. And then maybe it's sparkly underwear at the grocery store. Maybe that's the next level that we can ask for in society. Maybe we just got to walk around with a lot of naked people, because that's what it feels like right now. It's a lot of raw and a lot of naked people that are like, I'm naked. You know, getting society to this place of crawling emotionally. What are my emotions? I'm angry. I'm really afraid. Wow, thank you. Thank you for showing up in your anger and you're really afraid. And what are you feeling? What's going on in your body? Oh, I'm really constricted right now. Wow, tell me more about that. Oh, I can't breathe. Ooh. And then piecing it back together to this place of, okay, so like that's the streaker, that's person running through the store, right? That bottom line can't even crawl until they recognize their emotions, and then you start to crawl a little bit. And then you remember those toddlers when they're little and they're like, ah, when they first start to walk, or they're trying to walk and they're like hanging on the edge, and you're thinking you should put a helmet on that child. That moment. And then you put the helmet on, or you don't. You just kind of move furniture around and make sure that they're going to make it. And then you're like, oh, when they hit the corner of the wall. All of those little moments. But pretty soon they stopped hitting that corner of the wall. Ugh. So I'm somewhere between that corner of the wall, observation wise. And what's astounding about this to me is that we keep getting to practice this. It may not be like till 4 or 5 generations from now. Maybe there's miracles happening, but in 4 or 5 generations from now, it's being able to just show up in conversations where, you know what, I'm coming to this conversation. I recognize that like I took 2 days to just be quiet because I had nothing but venom. And then I took another 2 days and I ate really well. I got some good sleep. And I talked with some guidance. I got some guidance and some clarity. And this is really where I wanted to come to in this conversation with you. So growing up in like a really big Irish family, it was just whatever it was. Like, there was fist fights happening in the other room, and I would come in and my brothers would be on the floor wrestling and stuff would be falling off the wall. I'm like, I'm telling mom, and there's bribery. There's like just barely the fabrics of society happening in really big households. Maybe yours was really structured. Mine was semi-structured according to survival of the fittest. Funny, I got a lot of humor out of that family, and we were able to make it through so much. Wow. So high level drama, but also a high level of humor. And then you walk into relationships with people and you get to be there. And sometimes you get to ask permission. Hey, I'm planning to show up really messy today. Is that going to be okay with you? Or for like the next 10 years, I don't plan to take care of myself. I'm not going to brush my teeth. I'm definitely not going to groom myself. And I'm not doing the dishes. So put up with it. Like that little, those little digs that you get to do. Or not. So it's slowing down enough to recognize, wow, nervous system, 4-year-old, 7-year-old, 13-year-old inside of me. I love your angst. It's keeping me amazingly protected. Thank you. Do I have anybody else in the house that's an adult around here that can run this place? And sometimes there isn't. Sometimes we haven't cultivated that. Clearly, if you look in society right now, we haven't cultivated that. It's a process. I started rewilding my children 7 years ago, I believe. Rewilding, like took them out of school. I'm like, okay, wow, that's just not happening anymore. So I took them out of like the traditional forms of education and I asked them the question, what are you passionate about? What do you want to learn about? I would love for you to know about high-level mathematics. I would love for you to be able to read great literature, write, articulate, be in a place where you can have compelling conversations with people. What is it that you would like? How can you meet me here? And one of the continuous pieces and threads that I come with in all of my conversations with them, they'll come in and they'll say, hey, I would really like to buy this headset. And I'm like, great. Okay. So what kind of a game plan do you have together in order to put the money together, in order to formulate that? What kind of business ideas can you come up with? How can you see value with what's going on within yourself and offer that back to, your community to see how you can get that for yourself? But another key point that I continuously sit down with them around is, oh, okay, that tells me if you want that, then emotionally you'll want to be here. And I don't know that many people have had those conversations. If you want to be in a relationship with other people, do you know how to present yourself so that you're not just vomiting on people? You do all this for me. It's your responsibility to take care of me. It's like, no. Your responsibility as you're learning how to crawl, and then you want to make yourself get up and get over to that table, that is your responsibility. If you want those cookies, then it's taking the few moments in a day in order to pull yourself together and start shifting the mind and the patterns and the behaviors and getting into the alignment of nourishment. And then people are like, I don't want nourishment. I want to eat junk food all day. I want to stuff my face with candy and cookies. And I want to sit and drink a lot of soda and have cavities. And I'm like, that is 100% your choice. But please don't get pissed if in 6 months from now you have cavities and no way to pay for it? I had all of these long conversations. My dad used to sit with me every night when I was a little kid, and he'd be like, we'd kneel at the side of the bed, and he'd always pray, and he'd be like, and all of the people who are not being looked after tonight, please watch over them. And I'd repeat it, right? And what's funny is that I don't even think my dad, like, I don't know what he believes, but he's close to somewhere near an atheist, but he was always like, we'll hold out a little hope. We'll just throw it in there a little bit. And so much of that was, hey, pay attention to the other humans on the planet. Get yourself to a place of taking really good care of you. And then turn around and take a look and see who else is willing to show up to invest in themselves in order to help take that next step, in order to crawl, right? So this is it. This is us. This is society starting to crawl. The very beginnings of it. And this year, I think, has shown the absolute best in humanity and the absolute points where we could shift in humanity. I was very careful there. And the points of shifting happened for me internally this year. The points where I finally started paying attention because I asked to start paying attention to that. Like, show me in full color where I can shift. And can I do it with good humor? And can I do it in less than 24 hours? Like, those were some of the milestones I was going for. And it just so happens to turn out that less than 20 days before the end of this year, I know that there's a lot of calendars, but for here, less than 20 days, I got another big shift. So I showed up at my dad's house and I'm crying and I'm like, and my dad's like, damn kid, you got to toughen up. Right? My dad's in his 80s, raised a lot of children. You got to toughen up. And what I said was, Dad, I need to open my heart more. Yes, there's a toughness about it. Yes, the toughness is pull yourself together. This is only round one. I'm like, where's the finish line, right? Not the finish line. Where's the team? Where are your team of people? And if you're not in with your team of people, if you have figured out this year that you're like, I don't know, I thought I had a team of people. What happened to everybody? If you have cleared your team of people, the good news is that there's all kinds of wonderful new teams of people. I talk about this a lot. I was in a 12-step meeting. I was 17. I was raised in 12-step meetings for an extensive period of time. Most of my life, probably started at like 3. We would have my parents owned a campground, so we would have huge meetings out at the campground. And I was 17 sitting in a meeting, and they were talking about 33% of the people will love you no matter what you do. You can be the messiest. You can show up sparkle underwear, no sparkle underwear, running naked through the place, and people are like, I love that person. No matter what. That's your 33%. And then there's another 33% that are like, I hate you. They're like up and down. They bring you into their life. They cut you out of their life. They bring it. You have to make certain markers. And if you don't make those markers, they're going to kick you out. They're going to talk about you. They're going to be like, right? A little frenzy. And then there's the 33% of the people. So like there's billions of people in the world, right? So your 33% is a pretty seriously high number of people. So the other 33% of the people don't care. They're like, I have never even heard of that person. Your soul and your spirit deserve to flourish with the 33% of the people who you can get messy with, who you can not have it all figured out with, who give you so much in terms of the redos in life, who celebrate every single freaking tiny little step that you take. You deserve that. Sometimes they're your family, sometimes they're not your family. Sometimes that 33% of people who hate you, and when I say hate you, it's that they don't like themselves enough to be able to care for you in the way that you deserve to be cared for. So that's what I mean by hate you. It isn't that they actually hate you. It's that they don't have everything within themselves to love and adore you on your journey. Let them go. As we're turning the corner towards this next 2021, ask the bigger questions of where am I holding these spaces in my heart? Where am I hating people? Where am I hating myself? Where am I limiting and spending all of my energy? Where is that happening? Every year I kind of get to this little place. I'm like, oh my gosh, here comes New Year's. Maybe I can focus more on myself this year so that I can give back on a much bigger level. So I got that 24 hours. I was in it, right? I was in it deep, crying at the kitchen table. I was doing it. I was committed. My dad just with that steadfast Irish kid, pull yourself together, breathe, eat some dinner. You're going to be okay. Let people go from your life. Like a lot of people are like, I'm going to turn and I'm going to manifest something wonderful. I'm going to ask for this vibrancy. And then everything starts showing up in that vibrancy and they're looking this direction. They're like, but look at all that stuff. That stuff's terrible. And the other person's like, you know, their guardian angel or whatever is like, hey kid, over here. And you're like, oh, right, that's right. I love that stuff. Here we go. Like 4 more steps. And then like, it's like, but what if, oh, look at how gross all that stuff is. That's terrible. Let's just, nah. And then they go to sleep at night and they're trying to wake up and they're in this place of, I don't understand why my life is not coming together. I'm like, well, crawling. We're just starting to crawl. Let me just see if we got any comments. Shauna, how do we frame this to look like we're functioning? That is the question of the day. I love that. How do we frame it? In that 24-hour period, I was able to stop. And the piece that I asked myself was, where am I playing the victim? And I was really proud of myself because I'm like, I love you, little victim. I love you. I love how profound and dramatic you have made this story in your life. Bravo. Bravo, little one. Bravo. Right? I could win an Academy Award for that victim. Oh my gosh. Movie scripts have been written about that victim. I have played it in so many roles. I have cast myself in so many roles of that. And it was like vibrantly in front of me, dramatically in front of me. And I saw it and I was like, oh, here you are. This was after the table, after the conversation with my dad. Oh, yeah, here you are. Here you are. What can I do for you? What are your needs? So if you're in these big dramatic, like, woo, that, if that is happening for you, first take my course from Spirituality Gone Wild. Take it so that you can even start to comprehend, like, and just start to use the language with your brain every day, checking in, checking in, checking in for less than 2 minutes a day. So the more that you hear this language, the more that you can start to see, oh, there you are. There are all of my personalities. They're amazing. And they show up when I am flatlining. So they're over here, right? They're in that direction. They're like, you're flatlining. And they're throwing stuff and they're like, words and insults and, and shut down and push away and all of the things that I'm like, oh yeah, let's spend a huge amount of energy over here. And it's exhausting. And then instead it's like, oh, look over here. There's breathing. There's slowing down. There's asking the question, hey, what are your needs? And when I say needs, like, let me read you some of these needs because some people are like, I don't have any needs. You do. You do have needs. So let's say that there's like this like major rage happening, right? Like there's this major anger, the emotion of anger, the constriction of the body, the feelings. Somebody's calling me. That's my dad. That's cute. Okay, so some choices, some freedom, some independence, integrity, companionship, presence, nurturing communication, right? It doesn't just all have to be like you can actually ask for nurturing conversations. That can be a part of what you're requiring. Like you can actually say, hey, I have some things that I'd like to discuss with you. And if it gets to like this volume, then I need to walk away. Or, hey, I'm not really good at you just like blah all the time. Don't say it like that because it doesn't go well. But what you can't say is what you do want. And that might be, hey, in these next 3 days, I would really like to text back and forth just some thoughts that I'm having, and I'd really love to receive those texts back if you can make it less than 20 words at a time. Because my 4-year-old really wants to give it to you. And I'm really trying to not engage my 4-year-old in this conversation. And my 13-year-old would really like to see you gone right now. So if we could keep it to less than 20 words where we're not swearing at each other, where we're actually looking at this list of needs, which I have posted right here. It's all free. It's right there. The goodness. Sparkle pants, sparkle underwear. Get them on, people. The betterment of self. The basics of dignity. All right, so here's the next part. Imagine if half the population or more learned to crawl. Imagine that. Imagine if half of the population, at least, had the tools and the skill sets to be able to recognize their needs. Wow. Imagine how conversations would change. And when you would come upon a person that's like, hey, here's my list of needs. And then you would recognize that that person has no capacity whatsoever to address those needs. Then you could say, wow, okay, you know what? Thank you. I recognize that we are definitely not compatible and I wish you well. But I know that your needs could be addressed further on up the street. So good luck with that. And I adore you and keep going because I believe in you. Like all of that. That's what's coming. The more that we practice together, the more that we get through and these type breakthroughs, oh, this is where I showed up. Thanks for holding my head at the side of the toilet while I was vomiting all over society. I really appreciate that, society. Thank you for letting me be my very worst this whole year. I got to show up and just be toxic the whole year. Way to go, me. It's especially a lot easier to start recognizing all of this if we have a lighthearted personality around it and a lighthearted approach to it. Because this is some heavy stuff. Generationally, as far as I know, we are the first generations to look at all of this emotionally. Like it was happening to us, right? The empaths, the people in the family who were like, I don't understand why I smoke 7 packs of cigarettes a day. People would just show up and they'd be like, I'm going to be in your space all the time. And there's nothing that you can say or do anything about, like from the school systems to the parental, like the authority figures, all of that. Like, and then people like, I don't understand why I need oxygen. Right? Nervous system. Breathe. So I want to welcome you to some of the first generations who are starting to look at the emotional health and well-being on behalf of the planet. Way to go. And maybe there are societies who have this down. I've traveled quite a bit so far. I haven't seen that in society. But there is some very, very deep wisdom on all of us beginning to connect, adore, and love and cherish one another. I'm going to leave you with this, which is rejoicing. As in do it again and again and again and again and again. Joy, which is the totality of all of your emotions, all of them. And knowing how to engage and navigate through the grand adventure of all of those emotions. Sing. What music do you have that you can bring to the table during this adventure in order to create these massive playlists for humanity? Matt Kahn, I'll leave you with this last piece. Matt Kahn talks about, imagine that you're smoking a cigarette and that as you're smoking, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I can't believe I'm doing this. So many people die from this every year, right? First of all, I want you to recognize that inhale of breath is you getting oxygen. So way to try to gain oxygen. That's number one. The second part of that is the idea that next time you're doing something that you're wanting to go from this direction to this direction, think about and process blessing 30,000 people the minute that you're looking that direction. I recognize that today, this is so silly. I recognize that today, this is my experience, and that for 30,000 people, this is going to shift today. And I'm sending this out to everybody in this crew that today, your life will become more empowered, more peaceful, more joy-filled, more happy, that you'll all be able to shift. So as the cigarette is going up to the mouth, you've just blessed 30,000 people, or maybe it's 3 million. You could make the numbers endless. And that tells your brain that even though you're doing something that might be detrimental, you're also blessing people. So way to go, you. Rejoicing, rejoicing. I adore you. If you have any questions, please drop them in the box. I always like to just leave a few moments here as I'm wrapping up. And I really enjoy hearing your musical ideas throughout the week. You are welcome to share this out. You can find me on Spirituality Gone Wild. You can also find me on Lighthouse Effects. Let me know how I can celebrate your life this week with you. Let me know if you need any prayers said for you this week. I really love and adore praying for people and sending it out for all others who might be going through that exact same scenario somewhere else in the world. Okay, we're wrapping up for the night. Thank you so much. I believe in you. I believe in this journey. I believe in the grand adventures, in the redos, in rejuvenation, and in maximum grace. May goodness be upon you this week. And if it's messy and it's not goodness, put on some dance music and dance in that messiness. Because, you know, not everybody gets to that place. So really celebrate the heck out of the not so good places as well. Because we should make this whole planet a joyous celebration. Good night.